What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the Triple H podcast. Happy Hour Hoops. I'm here with Steve right now. Jake will be joining us shortly. And never forget, guys, a Happy Hour Hoops is brought to you by the WinStreaks app. WinStreaks, guys, it's simple. It's free to play. You make 5 picks per day. Any sport. I know baseball is the hotness right now. You guys
and it's during the day.
I was gonna say games all day, all night, every day. A multitude of games. You guys can just keep picking those winners. It's simple, guys. You know the deal by now. And if you don't, 100 players win cash prizes every week up to $2,000. Again, 100% free to play. You can make up to 5 picks per day on the NBA, NHL, college basketball, and MLB right now. Obviously, college football and the NFL when it comes back around. And again, no deposits ever, guys. Refer your friends and win an additional 50% of what they win. Use our code HHH when you sign up and start winning cash prizes today. Decent show for you guys today. We don't have too much on the slate, but everything that we have has a lot of substance. So we'll get into our probably final MVP discussion of the season for the NBA, just because there's only so much time left and Steve can only take so much of it, and the Luka slander that happens on national TV. We have notes that we'll go over, and then we'll talk a little Final Four preview, both men's and women's. Both college tournaments heating up. The women's kind of taking over Monday night. The ratings were a pleasant surprise, and it was just cool to see that everyone was tuned in to both tournaments. So we'll get to all of that, starting with the news and notes as always. Steve, I don't know if you caught any of it last night, but Joel Embiid returned, and the Sixers got a win.
They got a win over the Thunder.
Joel came back in the lineup over the Thunder. No SGA, no J-Dub, but still impressive.
Still a win, and kind of, what you need, right, for this Philly team right now. What I do like, too, about Philly is that they said that Embiid was probably going to be playing roughly like 20-ish minutes this game. He played more than that. Mm-hmm. He played more than that. And you know what was nice about it, too, is they kept him in the game at the very end when it mattered, when they wanted to get the win. And Embiid, kind of did what Embiid has done before the injury. He just used his size, got to the free throw line. He's just too big. But also the one thing I really liked about Embiid, which we kind of saw at the beginning of the year when he was the clear-cut front runner for MVP, he drew the doubles and he just made the players around him better. And that is a huge, huge positive sign for the Sixers, because maybe Embiid won't take on maybe the volume or the toll that he did before his injury, but if he can just get the defender's attention. I mean, we're talking about this was a Sixers team that beat the Thunder. Granted, no SGA, no J-Dub, but without Tyrese Maxey too. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is just Embiid coming back, drawing so much attention by the defense and making the players around him better, which is what you want your franchise cornerstone player to do. And it was a perfect example of it. And I said, last week that we wanted to see Embiid in actual games before the play-in or before the playoffs to really see what the Sixers could be like, because there's no way you could just throw him back into the fire. Guys, this is earlier than I thought he'd be back. The Sixers still have about 7 games, I believe, left to play. This is fantastic news for Philly fans because, A, Embiid looked very, very good. And B, he played more than the expected, limited role. And C, just you got time now. You got time to get him back, into full swing right before the playoffs. Now, what I will say, though, is tough for the other playing teams in the East right now. Tough situation. Maybe Philly sneaks in, gets the 6 from Indiana. But right now, I think they're 2 games out of Indiana. Right now, everyone's happy as NBA fans, but those playing teams fans, they got to be miserable right now.
Yeah.
Because we might be seeing a fully healthy Embiid come playoffs.
What's up, Jake?
Hey, how's it going?
Welcome in.
Jake just hopped in. You honestly, perfect time. We were just at the first bullet of the first news and notes here. Any thoughts on Embiid's triumphant return last night?
Well, Steve hit my biggest point right there at the end. It's terrifying if you're a Bucks fan, a Cavs fan as myself, if they're in that 6 seed, if they're a 7 seed. Even you at the 8, even you at the 1, if they end as the 8 seed, Dunny, it's not the most appetizing
Right.
matchup there. Not fun. I mean, would you rather have Embiid back in the Sixers or the Miami Heat as a Celtics fan? Because none of those are good options, but
I think just track record wise, I would have to go Embiid in the Sixers.
I think so too.
Especially with what I saw from the Heat last night and Terry Rozier going nuclear. So I don't.
Yeah, his best game. He's rounded into form.
Yeah, he's embracing the Heat culture. But no, I think just Sixers and Joel. Even with Joel back, I think matchups favor the Celtics a little bit more in that matchup. But yeah, I mean it's a good point with just that dogfight down there. Obviously there's only a few games left, but people forget how tight knit just both conferences are, top to bottom, really, aside from the Celtics in the East, but everywhere else in both conferences is super tight. A lot of things can still change. And yeah, I mean, I think we talk about how, Golden State, LA is a possibility in the play-in. Out west, I mean, Miami and Philadelphia with a healthy Embiid would be, pretty fun stuff for a play-in game as well.
Do you think one of them catches Indiana? Because I think that's a very real possibility that one, if not both, could jump Indiana. Just the way that they've been playing as of late. Obviously, Philly getting Embiid back too can help them. I think Miami will catch Indiana. I think they're a half game back of them right now. Mm-hmm. And, if you look at it, I guess in that sense, right, let's just say Miami catches Indiana. They get the 6. Indiana, Philly, 7-8, whatever you want there, right? Philly probably takes out Indiana there. They become the 7 seed. So then you're Boston. You're playing either Indiana, Chicago, or Atlanta. And, I want to say Atlanta lightly because DeJounte Murray has been the Celtic. He's been the Celtic killer. But regardless, I think you got to like that a lot more than a possibility of Philly falling down and potentially playing them as the 8 seed. And also, too, one of our most loyal listeners, JBC, I'll tell you what, if Miami can get the 6 and Indiana falls, I would take Chicago possibly out of the play-in over Atlanta and possibly Indiana. And then you got, a 4 extra games of the season. You're losing to Boston in all 4, but you get 4 extra games for Chicago fans. But I look at it that way. I really think these teams are going to jump Indiana because Indiana just hasn't had it as of late. No, Halliburton's been playing better. But do we still think Indiana may be a frisky, maybe a threat? Would you not want to see them in the play-in? Would you want to keep them as a 6? Because in my mind, I'd rather see Indiana if I'm one of the top dogs than Miami.
Chicago is the best clutch team in the NBA right now.
Yeah,
I mean, it's crazy. So if it comes down to it in a play-in thing, you would have to, if it's a close game, especially with Indiana, the way they've played lately, I'm with you there. I think Chicago could sneak that out. Indiana is really coasting in off their really early season strong start. Remember, this was a top 4 seed going into January, a team that we were like, man, they're really surprised by. And they have fallen off, whether it be, there was injuries that they were dealing with, and also bringing Siakam into the fold, and everything else hasn't been as smooth as they thought. But yeah, I'm with you there. The play-in is going to be interesting, obviously, in both sides of the conferences. But the East, that 6th spot is valuable because if you don't want to run into the Bucks or the Celtics in the first round, if you could take on the Cavs or the Knicks or the Magic, any one of those teams that could be in that 6th seed could easily pull that upset off. I would not be surprised. And those series prices would be very, very close.
Yeah, it's a good point, and I do think Indiana is going to fall out of the 6. Unfortunately for me, one of my bold predictions before the year was that Indiana Pacers were going to be a top 6 seed. It was looking great for a while.
They are still. They've won 2 straight, so they're still holding on. It's just.
It does appear they're going to fall out, and just to kind of wrap up this conversation about the bottom of the East here, or from the 6th seed down, I guess I should say. The Heat play the Sixers tomorrow and then play the Pacers on Sunday. So a lot of head-to-head still to be decided.
Playoff basketball right there. Those are playoff basketball games right there.
It's a great point here. The Hawks do love the play-in games. My Cavs know that.
I'm telling you, Boston doesn't want to see the Hawks right now as the 8th seed. I mean, regardless of what you think the matchup is, Boston doesn't want to see them just based on.
If you remember first round last year, like it wasn't a cakewalk getting past Atlanta last year. They Trae Young had a Trae Young game and gave us some of his bullshit, and obviously we saw what DeJounte Murray and the cast did recently to the Celtics. Also, just one last thing to mention here, the Heat also play the Hawks on next Tuesday, April 9th. So a lot of head-to-heads, a lot of things to be decided at the bottom of the East, bottom of the West too. But Joel Embiid really shakes that up. 24 points, 6 rebounds, 7 assists in his first game back. He definitely looked gassed out there, but that is something we probably all expected, and that's probably
why they brought him back too. And we weren't expecting him to be back this early, but obviously between fighting for that play-in/playoff spot, they feel like they can jump to that 6th seed maybe, and just wanting to get him into full strength if it comes down to a couple do or die games. He was gassed, but it looked good. Went to the line 12 times. Don't know how we feel about that completely, but. It is what it is.
I think it just goes to show like what he can do in a game too, because again, no SGA, no J-Dub, but the scoring margins of that Sixers game last night, it was very low scoring. The second half picked up a little bit, but I think like well into the second quarter, both scores were still in the 20s. And that's what happens when you have a guy like Embiid back in there in the lineup, especially with no Maxey just kind of playing through Embiid. So
I want to see. Philly was down double digits in the fourth too. I think it was right around 10 or 11 points. They were down at one point in the fourth quarter too, and that's when you need the star to take over, right? And that's kind of what Embiid did. Whether he went to the line a lot, but it's also because he just ran at him. He's a big body, can't stop him.
That's a great point.
Oh yeah.
We need that storyline. That's 100%. Doc Rivers versus the Sixers, the revenge series for Embiid, maybe.
That would be lovely. So many, different storylines, different situations that could play out in the Eastern Conference. Keep an eye on that. And if you're a fan of one of these teams at the bottom here, it could get dicey. It could get exciting. I guess this is why the NBA implemented the play-in, because this is what it's all about this time of year. Luka.
It's made these lower seeds so much more exciting. I will say that. The races in the lower seeds, it's made it so much more exciting.
I like it for sure. I think season 1 I was a little hesitant. Since then, I think I've been for the play-in. Steve, I'm surprised you didn't want me to move on there. I was just about to say Luka broke the single season Mavs 3-point record last night. 258 threes in a season. It's just another accomplishment for Luka this year, man, and just another accomplishment in his young career. He just keeps breaking records, keeps doing things that other guys haven't done. I figured it would be bad to not put that in there. So.
Yeah, I mean, you got to get used to talking about breaking records when it comes to Luka at this point. Yeah. I feel like every game I watch at this point in the season, it's a new Mavs single season record. They're like, oh, Luka is going to break this or break this. He's having an MVP type season. I don't think he'll get it because, we'll get to that at some point, but he's having an MVP type season, especially on the offensive end. I mean, there's just so many great things I can say about the guy, but Luka's 3-point shooting has improved big time from the start of his career, obviously, till now, but also since the All-Star break as well. It seems he's shooting a lot more efficient threes. And the one thing with Luka, which, with this 3-point record, the last thing I'll touch on is that I feel like 90% of his threes are just that slow step back. And every time I watch it, I'm like, God, it can't be that hard to defend. It doesn't look like you're like, how does he keep making these? They always look like it's contested. He's 6'7". He's going to get his space, especially when he's leaning back on it. But I would be curious, out of his 258 threes so far, how many are that type of motion with that, slow step back three? Because I would argue 200. He doesn't have a lot of catch and shoots, and there's not a lot of times it's just like a wide open pull up. it's usually kind of that same motion. It's like, hey, if it's, ain't broke, don't fix it.
I think
It's
the
insane.
thing people forget watching it, because I feel like a year or two ago when I first like noticed that was like his go-to move for, especially with the three ball like you mentioned. I think people just like forget how tall he is too,
Right.
because proportionally, like he doesn't really look it, like the way he moves around. It can be deceiving sometimes, but I think just that high release and then just him leaning back a little bit like that just makes a world of difference, even against some of the best defenders. I mean, it's almost always like a lengthier wing that's at least trying to guard him. Obviously they do a lot of things to free him up or to get a smaller guy on him, but yeah, just that little lean away and him with the high release. And then some of them you're like, there's no way that's going in, right? And then it's just bottom of the net, like he's already turned around, like Steph, and it's like, oh, okay, it's like.
Well, and I think that's the thing, right? When you have a guy who's 6'7" with that high of a release, and especially like you said, Dunny, leaning back a little bit gives you that much more space. To us watching it may look like, oh, this is a contested shot. But in Luka's mind, it's like it's not affecting his shooting motion, right? Even though the guy looks like it's in his face guarding him. That's the motion he normally shoot with. So it almost gives him an advantage on the tough shots or the circus shots. I think that's why you see Luka make so many of those ones where like, how did that go in? Because that's his normal shot. He doesn't have a stand-up straight release, right? If you watch Luka, even on a wide open shot, it's still the lean back type high release. So it almost helps him.
Yeah, and just speaking of circus shots, something else I'm sure Maverick has never done in a single season is that shit he did against the Rockets a few games ago with the fake out, and he literally just scooped it nearly from the 3-point line and just kisses it in. I've never seen that from anyone, let alone a Mavs player.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like every time like I watch a game, he just comes up with 1, 2, 3, sometimes more plays a night where I'm like, how did he do that? And only a fraction of them really catch like the mainstream kind of like highlight reels. But it's just like they had another play in that Rockets game where he put I want to say it was Thompson in a complete, or Jabari Smith in a complete blender just by the slow ball fakes. And I'm like, I feel like you watch it. This guy's at the YMCA. Yeah. Like they're very good defenders. The Rockets, pretty good defense with Jabari Smith, and it's just stuff like that, man. I don't know. Just a different speed.
I would love to see him and Kyrie play horse after practice one day.
Oh yeah,
it'd probably go on for hours, but I need to see it.
Well, you saw the one in warmups, right, where Luka threw it off the top of the Jumbotron and just banked it in. Like, he just shoots half quarters. Like, that's the thing, too. It's like, you watch the Mavs, like, shoot-arounds. Like, they're all warming up normally. Luka's just at half-court shooting.
Yeah,
no one's going to tell
what fuck shit can I do before the game started?
Well, that's what Curry did, too, right? That's the same thing Curry did. It's like, do I really need to practice my shot right now? No, probably not.
No. Yeah, the Jumbotron shit was hilarious because I saw that and was like, oh, this will probably piss off the Rockets. Smoked them by 20. Like, didn't matter. There was no extra motivation after this. Luke could do that in warm-ups on their home court. Let's move on here in the notes. This is probably the bad news in the notes. Spurs shut down Devin Vassell and Jeremy Sohan for the season. Sucks, right? I mean, you know what the Spurs are doing at this point. They're just probably not trying to win as many games, but also trying to, just let Wemby do his thing like he was the other night. I mean, he almost had a quadruple double in blocks last night against the Denver Nuggets.
2 assists and 1 block short against Jokic.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. It was insane, bro. Like I was not watching your Mavs much of last night, Steve, because I was finishing up watching Wemby just go back and forth with Jokic. And you're like, even down to the end, like the Nuggets getting out, they kept getting out 7-8 point lead. And then it was just coming back down to the last shot where Wemby puts up a 3 late. And I'm like, that's probably going in. Like the way that this guy is going right now, it's crazy. It is sad to see, Vassell and Sohan down for the year. Vassell's been really fun to watch this year, especially.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But you wonder now, there's been Trae Young trade rumors. There's going to be one of these Cavs guards, I think, is going to go in the offseason, depending on how the playoff goes and everything. And if those are the 2 guys who end up getting taken out for a Wemby deal and what Wemby kind of looks like the Spurs didn't even have a real point guard all year long. Like, what does Wemby look like if they have a guy that can actually, like, not even just a guy who can initiate offense, but a top tier point guard and initiator with him? Because the way he's looked without it, top 20, 15 player in the league already, like, can say that pretty safely. 10 if you really want to get into it. Like, and it's crazy to see. So it sucks for Vassell. I've liked him a lot all this year. The Sohan experiment at point guard was kind of ditched pretty early, but still like Sohan.
Trey Jones had a few moments, but
if they get that guy,
or wouldn't start half the games.
They get that guy, somebody real there at that point guard position, along with Keldon and him. That team next year is going to be a force already.
I agree. And not only, just like getting an extra guy right now, Wemby, you look at what the Spurs have done after the All-Star break. Now, granted, they haven't won a ton of games, but they've been competitive in a lot of games against very good opponents, especially, the games where Wemby's going off and to see what he's doing with the supporting cast he has now. And Jake, they had no business staying in that game with the Nuggets.
They were 15.5 point underdogs.
No business. And they stayed in the game. And that's been the case for a lot of games in the second half of this season with Wemby. I look at it right now. I mean, in my mind, guys, I truly believe that Wemby's having one of, if not the greatest rookie season we've ever seen. I think you got to put LeBron James' season as a rookie probably at number one, just because of, everything, the implications of the age and what he did. But Wemby's got to be up there just numbers wise. And it's one of those where he's impacting offense and defense. Like, I know we had high expectations for him. Bro. He's the best defensive player in the NBA. He's not going to win Defensive Player of the Year award because it's just all agendas at this point. And I get it. Like, the Timberwolves are having a great season. Rudy Gobert is playing well too. But if you're asking me right now who's the best defender, watch Wemby. Watch Wemby play. Watch Wemby play basketball for 5 minutes. Watch his highlights. He makes NBA players uncomfortable because of his size and athletic ability. They have to change everything they're doing.
I've never seen so many players start driving to the rim and just like decide to turn around.
In the NBA,
we're not going to do this.
It's unheard of in the NBA, bro.
Too.
Yes. Just him being there. But not only that, he is a rookie, guys. This guy is a rookie. This is his first taste of NBA basketball. And his awareness, his defensive awareness of just knowing, when to go up for the block, or knowing how to get into the passing lanes, or just knowing, all right, this is when this guy's going to go up. This is how I'm going to, defend it. It's unbelievable. I mean, we're talking about a guy, and I know we talked about this, I think, at the start of the year, where what's Wemby's ceiling, and we all agreed on something of like 20, 25, 15, and like 5 blocks as his peak. We could see Wemby average like 7-8 blocks a game, and I would not be surprised.
Yeah, I mean that'll probably happen as soon as next year. I mean, you put a better team around him. It allows him to play a little more freely on both ends. I mean, who's to say that he can't do that? And I like how you're saying, he just disrupts NBA players' shots with ease. It's not just NBA players. It was Jokic last night. Like, there was a sequence where he got the best of Jokic twice down the floor. And the only way Jokic was able to stop it, he kind of cherry-picked a little bit and then decided, I can't lay it in this time. I'm going to have to dunk. And he kind of like dunked by Wemby. Wemby was a little behind him, and he was able to slam it home. But, I mean, Jokic is a guy on a nightly basis. We've been saying for years he pretty much has an unblockable shot. Yeah. All of a sudden, Wemby's on him, and it looked like it was the easiest block he's ever had. Yeah. It's crazy. I know we texted a couple weeks ago, saying – who in the league wouldn't you take? Like, who would you take over Wemby right now as far as like starting your franchise around? I think I said maybe Jokic and Luka at the same time. And then we kind of went back and forth. Like, maybe Jokic is a little too old. You take Wemby for the age. I don't think there's anyone anymore. I think it's I think you just take Wemby and you take what he gives you for however many years that is, because this shit's special, and he's doing it with, no disrespect. I know Vassell, like you guys were saying, has been playing pretty well. They have some other talent on this team, but it's really next to nothing besides Wemby, and the record shows that, and he's still doing all of this.
I think you could argue 3 names: Luka, Jokic, and Giannis. I think
Yeah.
those are the only names you can argue. I don't think you can really argue any other names over Wemby if you're starting a franchise right now, right? And B, I mean, like, I don't think you're crazy if you say, like, if we're doing a redraft right now, NBA teams are starting over and Wemby goes 1. I don't think that's crazy because
I think
we're talking
I would do
about
it.
Wemby joining arguably the worst supporting cast, right? That's why they got him at 1. You could argue maybe the Wizards, maybe the Hornets, right? Although Brandon Miller's having a nice rookie year himself. But
Yeah.
in terms of supporting cast, before this draft, Spurs were, pretty much the worst if going into the draft. Like, everyone looked at him as this is the worst, probably the worst supporting cast, but he's got Popovich, Wemby, he's said he's a professional. We'll see how it is. And that's the nice thing about Wemby too, right? We haven't heard anything about off court. It's like this guy shows up, goes to work, and he goes home. And that's great news if you're a Spurs fan. And that's great news for, what Wemby's future is in the NBA. Because if he's a guy who, like everyone's talking about, is just hyper fixated on getting better, you're telling me a guy who's 7'4", 7'5", with his athleticism, with his shooting ability too already. That was the one thing we were going to be worried about, is how maybe the shot will be, or maybe it won't translate over. No issues there right now. And it's only gotten better as the years gone on.
And that's another thing I was going to say too. Like, it's with the defensive shit. Like, if he has a better team around him, he's going to get better looks from 3 too. Absolutely. Like, last night, he didn't shoot the 3 ball particularly well. That will also something that gets better. And that's just something that happens anyway. Like, guys just get better. That the one thing that gets better every single year you stay in the NBA is your 3-point shooting. Like, Vince Carter, who we'll talk about here in a second, was able to stay around just because his jump shot was so much more improved. One of LeBron's knocks on him for a while was that he wasn't the best outside shooter. He's shooting over 40% from 3 at age 39. Like,
he went 9 of 10 the other night.
Yeah, it's just something that gets better, and that's we should expect the same thing from Wemby. I mentioned Vince Carter, him and Billups elected into the Hall of Fame. Chauncey Billups, Vince Carter. I think that's great. I do want to tie in one last thing about Wemby. I just wanted to give those guys their love, and also give Rondo his love. He officially announced his retirement, even though he hasn't been playing in a couple of years. So I think we all kind of assumed that, but Rondo kind of the last of an era as far as the point guards go, and like guys who just traditional point guard. I know CP is still in the league, but obviously we don't see him really play like that anymore. I purposely put the Rondo thing after Wemby because imagine a point guard like Rajon Rondo with a guy like Victor Wembanyama.
Oh my God, bro.
And I wanted to ask you guys, Jake, I know you mentioned like either the Cavs guards, obviously the Trae Young rumors, anyone realistic in the league, any guard or point guard realistic in the league, who would you guys, if you were San Antonio, who would you guys go after, or who would you guys, try to put with Wemby for next year? I know this is off the top.
If they can get Donovan Mitchell, that's the answer right there.
Yeah.
You saw what Mitchell and Allen could do together. Imagine what him and Wemby can do. And I think that's going to be pretty realistic the way the Cavs are playing basketball right now.
And that would probably piss Gobert the fuck off too.
Yeah, it would.
Yes, it would. Yeah, that's good.
I don't hate these are my 2 names, and I think one is harder to make happen, but I think this is the more difficult one to make happen. I think De'Aaron Fox would be fucking awesome.
Yeah, he's not leaving Sacramento.
But I don't think he is either. My realistic one is Josh Giddey, because I think payroll on that Thunder team is going to get tough. I think he's probably the, I don't want to say the last one they choose from, but obviously, both Jalen's are staying, SGA's staying, Chet's staying. It's going to get tough eventually. And I don't know if he might even be due for a contract this summer, but I think that's something that wouldn't be too tough to get done. A Euro player that Pop loves, a guy who, is fine with being pass first. He can do a little bit of everything, but I think their styles of play would work nicely. And I think it's more than realistic.
What about,
I got a name. Kind of forgotten because he's hurt right now. What about LaMelo Ball?
I was just gonna say it.
LaMelo Ball on the Spurs with Wemby,
I mean, no
bro.
one wants to see that shit. Like, no, I mean, as far as like they'd be scared of it.
Yeah, no, I knew what you mean. That would be, I mean, appointment television every single night.
Especially
LaMelo Ball.
Pop could fucking probably get, Ball to clean it up a little and get his act together. And be like, yo, that Hornets stink, dude. You got to get it off you because you're with the Spurs now, bro. You gotta.
And he's a fantastic playmaker.
Yeah,
LaMelo Ball's a fantastic playmaker. I mean, obviously, he could take the game over too and be the primary guy. But when you watch some Hornets games, like when the Hornets, like not at their peak, but when they were playing the best, when LaMelo Ball was fully healthy, is his passing, man. He makes some flashy passes.
Yeah.
They kind of just go, unnoticed or just overlooked because it's the Hornets, right? No one really cares if you're making a flashy pass when you're down 15. But LaMelo Ball with Wemby, I think, would be so much fun. Also, too, talk about the size there.
Yeah,
I'm talking about the size on that team.
Not thinking of just a straight point guard as a guy they could add to this team, but it's a guy we talked about the last couple of weeks, and the Spurs could spend some money on. What about Paul George as a secondary guy? Defensively, that those two together would be scary. He'd be just a creator on the wing and everything else. He's played some two in his. I mean, he's pretty much playing the two right now with next to Kawhi the whole time. That's a guy that I could see them go. Why would you not want, if you're Paul George, why would you not want to sign with a team like that?
Right.
Wemby's going to carry the load. You're aging into your career. Like, you don't have to do anything crazy. I know Philly is a rumor for them and everything else, but if it was between Philly and San Antonio, like, I think I'd rather just go with the young gun than go with an oft-injured Joel Embiid to pair up with, right?
To be in Texas over Philly, probably.
Yeah, too. Yeah.
For an LA guy. That I don't hate that at all, Jake. I also think, I think people to go against that might say that, he probably wants to go to a contender. I think you put PG with Wemby, they're pretty serious just with that move as it is. And then, obviously you add a few pieces over the summer, which we hope that they'll do anyway. I don't hate that at all. I love that. If it was LaMelo and Wemby, that every basketball fan ages 15 and younger would just be the biggest Spurs fans ever. I feel like.
What if the Spurs say, you know what, let's trade our future. We want to win now. Give it to a team that's been terrible. Pistons get Cade. Cade and Wemby.
I mean, the Pistons should probably do that.
You're right. The way the Pistons have been going, they're going nowhere. I mean, you get what you can for Cade, and you're going to get a lot at this point in his career. And I think the Spurs are in that mode where it's like, you know what? We've seen so many improvements, and we know we have the generational player. That's another thing, too. Take a big load off Cade. A lot off Cade. Where he can just –
Go ahead.
Where he could just kind of be the, like, number two. And I think Cade would be perfect in that role.
This is a guy that is a lesser tier of that, and I don't know if they do it because the guy that they drafted to replace him had such a bad year, and Scoot Henderson. But Anthony Simons would be a really interesting guy who's had a lot of who's we've been waiting for him with a lot of opportunity, right? That would be the opportunity if he's going to make it happen. It wouldn't take as much if they wanted to do it, so they could still kind of keep that core intact. I'm just trying to even think of guys around the league that would have that impact because their life's going to be so much easy. If you have any kind of like skill at the point guard position or as an initiator, Wemby is your best friend. Like, it's just, he literally seeing him call for oops it'll never get old to see him like calling for at the 3-point line. He's like, just send that up there. I'll find it.
I'll go get it.
It's like, it's like in the NFL when a number one wide receiver and you just fuck it, he's down there somewhere.
Randy
down
Moss
there
throwing his
somewhere.
hand up like 5 yards off the line. Exactly.
Last one. Selfishly, this kind of makes sense to me, and even I think this could even work if they go out and get Paul George too, and then make this guy your point guard. What if they? And I know it would be kind of weird because he didn't really even play for them, but what if the Spurs were to swoop in and take Marcus Smart from the Memphis Grizzlies?
Yeah.
Last
Yeah.
year, didn't get anything with the Grays. Obviously, he's not going to be the true point guard ever as long as Ja's there. What if they go sign Paul George and then swoop in and get Marcus Smart on, the semi-cheap coming off an injury? You already have your point guard. Let's give you
would be disgusting.
whatever. I mean, the Spurs should be giving up whatever to get better assets around. But yeah, that defense, PG, Marcus, and Marcus, my guy, he's a very underrated playmaker. I mean, this is a guy who worked on it a lot. He was a fantastic oop thrower to Robert Williams for years. I wouldn't hate that.
Do you think outside of Wemby, there's anyone on the Spurs right now that they wouldn't get rid of or that stays the core? I feel like they want to keep Vassell. If the right deal's there, they deal him. But I feel like Vassell is probably the only other guy they'd be like, we really want to keep.
I think they probably do, but I think at the end of the day, depending who's on the other side, I think they're probably willing to do anything.
I agree too. I agree.
But yeah,
I think Keldon Johnson and Sohan can get you something.
Yeah,
pair those guys with a couple picks.
Sohan especially, man. I think there's still a lot there that hasn't been unlocked, and I think the intensity and just the uniqueness of his game, I think, is intriguing probably to a lot of different teams who just need to kind of switch it up. But yeah, shout out Rondo. I know we kind of skipped over Rondo and Billups and Carter going into the Hall of Fame, but shout out to those, the guys who went before this generation. Well deserved. And let's do a little MVP talk before we get to the Final Four, fellas. MVP, take your pick. For me, it's probably just down to two now. And Steve, to your liking, SGA is not one of them for me. So
it shouldn't have been.
There you go. It's I think it's Jokic or Luka for me. Yeah. All we were saying every episode that we talked about the MVP, and you were the only one preaching for Luka. All me and Jake were saying that the Mavs probably have to move up that ladder a little bit in the West. That's all they have done since we've had those conversations. 2 games back on the Clippers right now. I was looking when we first started the episode. Neither team really has an easy remaining schedule. I would say that the Clippers probably have a little bit more difficult. They have the Nuggets, Jazz twice, Suns twice, Cavs and Rockets. The Mavs have the Hawks, the Warriors, the Rockets, Hornets, Pistons is the easy ones, but then Heat, Thunder also.
Thunder would be an interesting one because it's last game of the season. So you will see what the seed implications are for the Thunder. And right now, you look what the Thunder are doing. It seems like they're content with any of the top 3 because SGA and J-Dub out again, I believe, tonight against the Celtics. They're really not chancing it. Yeah, they're really not chancing it. They're like, what are you pumped about? Are you just trying to get 60 wins?
No, I said I'm bummed about it. I want to see
a good bummed. Game. Oh, I thought you said pumped. We got the 1 seed locked up.
No.
What do you care?
I wanted the revenge aspect because they beat us in OKC, and I want to see that how we fare.
Okay, that makes more sense. I thought you said pumped. I was like, what's pumped about the Celtics are up 12 games in the East.
We need 6. No.
Yeah, I was what are you talking about? But yeah, I mean, Maniac going with Doncic getting screwed like Allen did last year. I mean, it's the classic agendas, Maniac. I'll tell you this right now. It's the classic agendas. I've heard this too many times. What were all the talking heads saying when Luka was, 4th or 5th in the MVP voting behind Giannis, behind Tatum, behind SGA, behind Jokic? Oh, he's got to win. He's got to win. He's got to win. He's not winning. We can't have a team in the play and make the playoffs. And they were like, if Luka gets to the, if they get to like the 4 or 5 seed, then he's a real MVP discussions. Now he did that, and they don't want to talk about it. They want to just ignore it, and they want to bring up everything else they do. So now they're making up stuff of, oh, you can't win with this guy. By the way, like I know the Mavs lost last night, and if they won tonight, this victory or last night with this victory, that would have been a lot better. But Luka 11-1 in this last 12. Like the Mavs have one of the best records since the All-Star break, since the trade deadline. When they have their starting 5 of Gafford, PJ Washington, Luka Doncic, Derek Jones, and Kyrie Irving on the court, they have 1 loss this season with those 5. Luka and Gafford, I believe, now 13-1 when there's the starting lineup together. Like they've been winning games. Like and they're comparing the season-long win and loss. And I get the MVP is a season, it's a season award, right? It's over the entire course of the season. Well, you're looking at it where Kyrie missed 20 games, where Dwight Powell was starting, where Grant Williams, like Dunny, I know you love him, but he was not good for the Mavs, where he played a lot of minutes, where you had Dante Exum was out for a long period of time. And I know he's not a crazy player, but he's a lot better than the guys you can throw in there. And it's clear as day that Luka has played with the most injuries with his team, with the other MVP candidates, Jokic, SGA, Giannis, Tatum. I'm just a Tatum to make Dunny happy, but he's not in the discussion. It's clear as day. I mean, they're judging it. They're just looking at like what happened in the first 30 games of the season and just saying, oh, that's why the Mavs are at the 4 and 5. Yeah, the Mavs are the 5 seed right now for those reasons. But if we're looking at who the best teams are, probably since the All-Star break or since the trade deadline with, the rosters you're going to bring into the postseason, how can you argue the Mavs are not one of the top 5 teams? You can't. You simply can't. So the winning argument just does not matter right now. It really doesn't. It's the classic, in my mind, of just lazy argument where it's like, okay, he keeps putting up the numbers. Now they're winning games, and they're like, well, yeah, I still don't want him to win, so I have to find a reason. And where Maniac said with the Josh Allen similar situation, it's the same thing, right? He put up the numbers. The Bills were winning games, but they were like, yeah, well, we got to find a different reason. So let's just, move the narrative. Oh, Lamar is doing this or Mahomes is doing this, whatever it is. It doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is that people are not staying consistent with their arguments. If you want to say, oh, Luka can't win, whatever, okay, that's fine. But now he's starting to win. So where's the counter argument there, right? You can't try to tell me, oh, you can't win with this guy when he's been 11-1 in his last 12. They have, I believe, the 3rd best record since the trade deadline. They have he's 13-1 when Daniel Gaff said that 1 loss of this starting 5, which they're going to bring into the postseason with of Kyrie, Derek Jones, PJ Washington, Gafford, and Luka. And it'd be one thing, I guess, if the stats were comparable. Luka's stats compared to the other MVP candidates has been there's such a gap right now where the only one whose stats are comparable is Jokic. And I understand why Jokic is the favorite. I get the Nuggets have just been dominant. I get that Jokic can pretty much do whatever he wants any given night. And it's just like whenever you forget about Jokic, you look up and you're like, oh, this guy had 40, 15, and 10. I get it. I understand that. But Luka's been putting up these numbers all year long, and now he's putting up these numbers, and the Mavs are still winning. And it's just the lazy argument, oh, I just don't want him. I don't want him to be a part of this conversation. Mainly kind of almost like the 6-year-old argument where I just don't want to admit I'm wrong. And that's what it is. That's what I really think it is that these talking heads, and I'll get to a few of them in a little bit, but these talking heads don't want to admit they're wrong. And instead, and I give so much credit to the analysts or anyone talking sports or debating whatever you want to debate when you admit you're wrong or you admit your opinions changed on something because of something. I was always a LeBron hater growing up. I didn't like LeBron because of the fan base. I never liked LeBron because of the fan base. I always rooted against him. Guys, I would sound like a fool if I said right now LeBron's not one of the greatest basketball players I've ever watched, if not the greatest. And I really would say right now I probably would have LeBron over Michael Jordan in terms of just longevity and everything he's done. But the fact of the matter is, if you asked me 10 years ago, I'd be like, oh, LeBron, who cares about LeBron, chokes in the playoffs, this, that, blah, blah, blah. Your opinions have to change based on what you see, right? And it's never going to be the same thing from the first game you watch until the last game you watch. Everything changes. I mean, I don't want to keep bringing Maniac's point up, but it's perfect. Josh Allen, his rookie year was not very good. He made a lot of ceiling type plays. The next couple of years made a little bit more consistency, a lot more ceiling plays, but he had his bad plays too. He had his turnovers. And because of 1 or 2 years, that's been held against him for It feels like his entire career. With Luka, the Mavs missed the playoffs last year. They kind of quit. It was a disaster in the second half of the year when they got Kyrie. And I feel like everyone in their head still has that idea of Kyrie and Luka can't work together. Fun fact, Kyrie and Luka average the most points and combined assists of any duo in the NBA right now. Like, they've been playing fantastic together. Their plus minus since the All-Star break's been outrageous, but no one wants to admit that because they don't want to admit to being wrong, and they don't want to change their opinion. And to that, I pose the question is why? Why have we become accustomed to being so stubborn and I get it with media personalities, sometimes it's for clicks. I get that with clickbait. Also, ESPN too. If you don't think ESPN has their own agenda because now they have their own sports book, get the fuck out of here. Like, just stop with that, because there's clear agendas right now when you see how some of these guys are wording their statements when it comes to betting on awards and such. But my question is, why can't we just admit to changing our opinions? Why do we have to be so stubborn and go so far in the other direction where it makes us sound just moronic, stupid, than being like, hey, you know what? I did have this opinion at the start of the year, and then a bunch of events happened, and now my opinion's here. And I will be like the first to admit, like, when I'm wrong about something or when my opinion has changed with something, I'll be the first one to admit it. And I obviously have that. And I obviously have bias because I love Luka, right? And I want nothing more than Luka to get an MVP, which I think he deserves. And I really do think he's probably the best offensive player in the NBA. But the fact of the matter is, if he didn't deserve it, I wouldn't be, banging on the drum for this, or I wouldn't be freaking out or arguing on Twitter for this. If he didn't deserve it, I wouldn't be doing any of that. But these guys are naming guys that don't deserve it. And here's the thing. And if you want to pick Jokic, completely justified. I get it. I don't understand how people can say SGA deserves it. Other than it's their agenda that they want him to win it, that they're tired of these Europeans winning the award, dominating basketball. And, we talked about this earlier, right? We're like, Wemby probably goes one if you redraft right now. Who are the only three you could probably argue? Jokic, Giannis, Luka. Hey, they're all Europeans too. Yep. Is that because the old heads are upset about that they don't want the Europeans coming over and dominating American basketball? Because that's what it feels like to me. And I just don't get it.
For Luka's case, like, he's had almost like 3 parts of the season where the stats have been the same throughout. Like, he's averaging 34, 9 and 10 right now.
Pretty much, yeah.
At 49% shooting. SGA lower in all of those categories. We said, what does Luka have to do to be legitimately in this conversation? Move up the ladder in the rankings. They were the 8 seed for a while. I could understand if they didn't want to give a player on an 8 seed the MVP. I get that. Well, now they're not so far off from where OKC is at. And I just don't think it's an argument at this point. And like you said, the team that they have now is different than they had when they were stuck in that 8 seed. They've been much improved. I mean, Luka had a 73-point game this year, which is hilarious when I pulled up his stats. Their next game is against the Atlanta Hawks, and ESPN says, like, points per game versus blank team this year. His points per game versus Atlanta this year is 73, which is hilarious. But
don't worry, Donnie. The Hawks didn't play defense that game. It was an unimpressive 73-point performance.
I know, and the stat padding argument against Luka can't happen if you're for SGA, because we have those clips of SGA fouling at the end of games so he can get more shots up. Like, it's those are lazy arguments. Like, yes, what is SGA being super impressive this year? Of course.
Yeah.
And my thing, when the Mavs were still the 8 seed, I liked SGA's defense a little better, and I thought that was underrated. But at this point, I think that's out the door. I think it is between Jokic and Luka. And
if you want to make the defensive argument too, because I know that's where a lot of people want to say Luka doesn't deserve it because of his defense.
Yeah.
And this is funny because this is how narratives change. Jokic has been terrible according to the defensive metrics this year.
Yeah.
Terrible. But because the Nuggets won a championship, because his defense stepped up in the postseason when it mattered, everyone in their mind is like, oh, he's a good defender now, right? So that's the whole thing where it's just like people pick and choose what they want to see. They want to be like, well, Luka doesn't have the winning. He's a liability on defense, where his defense has been improved. Obviously, SGA's defense has been better. SGA, I think we can all agree, is a top 10 defender in the NBA, probably, right? One of the best defensive guards in the NBA. I think we can all agree on that. But if you want to use the argument of, oh, Luka doesn't play defense, Luka's defense, that's what's hurting him here. That's where SGA has the edge. Okay, well, Jokic's defense has been bad, but you don't hear a peep about that because they had the playoff success last year. I just think, like I said, I think people are stubborn, and it takes them sometimes 3-4 years to realize they're wrong.
Yeah.
That's all.
Jake, why don't you read us Stephen A's top 5 MVPs from the other day?
Stephen A. Smith had his top 5 MVP candidates: SGA, Jokic, Anthony Edwards, Jalen Brunson. Who was the 5th? I only have the
Yeah,
4.
he only named 4. He
Okay.
wouldn't. Don't worry. Even if Luka was his 5, he wouldn't name it. Also, too, the straw poll came out for the MVP, and there were 4 that didn't have Luka on the ballot of top 5. I mean,
yeah, it's just crazy.
Yeah,
bro.
it's insane.
Just stop it.
Dunny reiterated everything that I wanted to say about this. We were talking about it a couple weeks ago, and we are like, listen, if they're the 8 seed, he's just not can't be considered for it.
Agreed.
Whatever else, they're not that anymore.
They're the 5 seed.
They're the 5 seed. Could be the 4 seed by the end of the year. I'm still going with Jokic. I've been consistent with that, but Doncic has to be second, and he has to be first all team NBA. And those votes, he better be second in that voting. And I don't know if he's going to be. He's second in the betting odds right now, but it doesn't mean he's going to be second in that voting. And it's terrible. 34. If he was at a triple double, would he get it? That's the thing that made me so mad a couple years ago about when we had the Harden Russ argument, because I was on the Harden side and Russ had the triple double, and I think that because it was the triple double is the reason he got it. Russ was deserving as well. I just leaned towards Harden on that point. Is that wow, arbitrary? We're gonna go about this. If his numbers were at 10 and 10, would they do it for that? Because his numbers are as impressive as anything else. I think Jokic gets the credit for the efficiency as much as anything else. He's shooting 58% from the field right now to Doncic's 48%. That's a big difference. And obviously, as you mentioned, they're defending champions. They won 53 games last year. They're already at 53 games, so they've improved on last year. Jokic just gets better. So that's really the only argument though at this point. It's crazy though to see these guys come up. Anthony Edwards and Jalen Brunson, awesome seasons, should be all NBA considerations, for the second and third team. They're not in an MVP conversation here.
No.
What are we doing here?
Bro, Brunson, the next team have a better record than the Mavs. But Stephen A. saying that, and he's talking about winning matters. It's dude, you're in the Eastern Conference. And they don't have a better record. And this is the thing.
Jalen Brunson is shooting 47% from the field to Luka's 48%, and he has 27, 6, and 3. 3 rebounds a game. What are we talking about here?
This is the thing, too. If the offensive stats were even comparable, I'd be like, all right, then you can go close to wins a lot. It's not even close. It's not even close. I genuinely ask you guys this question right now. SGA, Anthony Edwards, Jalen Brunson. And Jokic is tough because it's kind of a completely different position. He's a center. Luka's a guard. Which one of those teams would rather have who they have now than Luka Doncic? None of them.
Yeah.
None of them. You can't try to tell me if you put SGA on the Timberwolves, they're not a better team than with Anthony Edwards. If you go with the reason Jalen Brunson's on the Knicks is because he couldn't play over Luka.
Yeah.
You're we can't get this guy enough minutes. So there's
once I saw
the
Brunson and Stephen A's list, I was like, okay, this dude is just strictly doing this because he's on the Knicks. And then I have the same thing about, it's not just Stephen A, because there's times where I can enjoy First Take and the Stephen A show. Yeah. And I respect, what he did to get to where he is. And, he's one of the best to do it in his realm. But there does get to a point where he tries to talk seriously about sports, and I think the other talking heads fall victim to this too. and this is something that I text you guys about all the time. It's just very clear that they don't fucking watch the games, bro.
No.
Mhm.
Colin
They don't-
Cowherd.
They don't watch the games.
Colin Cowherd called Luka Doncic Carmelo Anthony with a 3-point jump shot.
Yeah.
I mean, of all guys you could pick to compare Luka to, Carmelo Anthony?
Yeah, it makes
It's
no
also
sense.
like Carmelo Anthony had a 3-point shot. Too. What are you talking
That
about?
was one of the like better things in Carmelo's game was his 3-point jump shot. What are we talking about? They don't even play a
Colin
similar
Cowherd has-
style.
Colin Cowherd, I guarantee, watched one Mavericks game this year.
Probably.
One.
That might
One
be
single-
generous.
And that might be high. Yeah,
that might be
high.
that might be being generous. But that's the thing, and
You
it's
guys
like
don't have to convince me to fucking hate him, bro. He has hated the Celtics since the
I
beginning of time.
know.
And I'm biting my tongue until the Celtics hoist the trophy, because those are my expectations, and then I'll have my words.
Well, that's why, like, that's the thing. It's like at this point, like I said, it's just exhausting because we're at the point where I was arguing before because I'm like, I think Luka can do it. I think he can do this to get his name like in that conversation, a legitimate chance to win it. Because I think he does deserve it by the way he's played this year. I'm not going to lie to you there. I think obviously Jokic has this MVP case too. I think it should have been a 2-horse race for the past month and a half. That's what I've been preaching. But the fact of the matter, why it's exhausting, is because Luka's already done what he needed to do.
Yep.
The Mavs have been one of the hottest teams in the NBA. I know they lost last night. They missed 3 wide open threes. What are you going to do? Sometimes the ball doesn't go in. PJ Washington took way too many shots when Kyrie was wide open, drove me nuts, but they lost. But before that, they've been red hot. Luka's, like I said, won 11 of the last 12 games he's played. The Mavs have been one of the hottest teams since the deadline, one of the hottest teams of late. And not to mention, too, like, they did a lot of this on the road. This was a 5-game road trip where they went 4-1. They took out the Rockets. They won both of the huge games in Sacramento. And you know what happened when they won those 2 games in Sacramento? Not a peep about how Luka's playing or how this team's winning. More so when you would show the highlights, you would just have to hear the guy back. Well, SGA is my MVP. Well, we're not even watching the Thunder game, buddy. So I don't know what to tell you. It's gotten to the point where they don't want to admit they're wrong, and it's like, all right, well, I don't want to argue this anymore because what am I arguing it for? Because it doesn't matter what Luka does at this point. I mean, he had 47, I think it was 12-6 against the Rockets, who came in winning 11 straight. By the way, the game was in Houston. By the way, Luka had, I can't even remember. I think he had 32 points at halftime, something stupid. I can't even remember the exact halftime line. He had 20, I think 4 or 23 in the first quarter. I said to you guys, I think it was like 20, 23, 5 and 4, something in the first quarter. By the way, SGA had, I think, 17 points that night. Doesn't matter. Regardless, and all I heard about was stat padding. Oh, he's staying in the stat padding. What do you mean stat padding? You can't stat pad when you have 32 points in the first half. It's not possible. It's just called playing the rest of the game. And it's like, the Mavs are keeping their starters in because there's a 15-point game. I get it with 6 minutes to go, so they want to blow the lead. Like we've seen it happen.
15 points is
in the NBA against a team like Houston that plays like they do. Yeah, like of course he's staying in there, but it's when that game happened, no one said a word about his performance. It's like it never happened. And that's what drives me nuts. And I feel like Jokic, the only reason he has the exception right now is because the Nuggets won the championship, right, last year. So what can you say to discredit Jokic? But I'll be honest with you guys, and maybe this is just me, but I feel like Jokic puts up these giant games, and it's barely talked about on the media. Barely discussed. I mean, last night, even the game before last night, dude, the guy had like 28, 17, and 15, and they just don't talk about it. And it's SGA and the Thunder win. It's like everyone loves the shiny new toy. That's all they want to talk about. All they want to talk about is Jalen Brunson because it's the New York Knicks, because it's New York. But the fact of the matter is, like what these guys do, it just goes so unnoticed. It's like, all right, when something bad happens, we got to throw that up there. And it's like, well, it's hard to when nothing bad's happening. So now they just have to have their own agendas. I mean, I love
bad that
Shaq.
happened last night.
You know what?
Go ahead, Steve. Finish.
You know I love Shaq. I can't watch TNT with Shaq anymore. Every halftime, it's just he has to bring up SGA or he refuses. He has not mentioned Luka. It's so funny because the last like 3 TNT games the Mavs have been out, Shaq hasn't mentioned Luka once. Not once.
So strange. The national TV agendas are weird, but something else that didn't get mentioned last night, where I really don't care. I know
Yeah.
the Celtics shit they're gonna get clowned when they lose any games when they have a season like this, and they're gonna get clowned when they lose games because I think you said it a few weeks ago, Jake. Like Lakers, Celtics, they're just gonna get clowns no matter what if something bad happens to them or even if something mediocre happens to them. The Milwaukee Bucks lost to the Wizards last night when Giannis had a 35-point triple-double. Crickets, bro.
The Milwaukee Bucks have more losses with Doc Rivers as their coach than they did with Adrian Griffin.
Yeah.
And no one's saying a word. Not a word.
It's just weird what they choose to cover and then and not cover, I guess I should say.
Yeah, it's just everyone's got an agenda.
And I don't even want I don't want the Bucks to get clowned, but like to bring it up, I think you gotta do. Like you lost to the fucking Wizards and Giannis had a triple double. Like, come on, man, that's a story. I know they didn't have Dame, but still.
You should have seen. I forget which account did it. One of the verified like NBA like stats accounts was like Luka Doncic because he had a triple double last night. 35, 10, and 12, despite the loss, like in quotations, and it's like said like the classic Luka Doncic got roasted in the comments. Like, dude, this guy's won like 11 of his last 12. Yeah, like, what are you saying? Despite the like, it's just like they're so stubborn. They're hanging on to these like narratives and agendas. Bro. It drives me nuts. And this goes back to pretty much everything besides just the MVP talk. Why can't we just appreciate good basketball? Why does it always have to be an argument of who's better, who's best? I mean, the comparing eras, Dunny, we had our whole rant, the show Jake missed, where Dunny and I just ranted on why people are comparing eras but why do you have to, man? Why can't you just appreciate? And it's okay. It's okay, too, if someone's better than your favorite player. It's okay. It's okay. You don't have to make excuses for it. That's why I give you respect, Dunny, because I see way too many Celtics fans too saying like, "Oh no, Tatum's at my MVP right now." Like they're the top seed. It's like, yeah, Tatum's having a great year, but it's okay to be like, yeah, he's not MVP.
Yeah.
Also, Jaylen Brown's been better for like the last month.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Well, no one will ever give that man credit, which I will never understand that. One of my favorite players to watch.
He's been one of the best players just in the league since the All-Star break.
I know.
Yeah,
I know.
Zero credit, but that's I could go for a whole nother fucking episode. Let's give some Final Four previews. So let's give some like 10 minutes of love here to both the men's and women's. Where do you guys want to start? I'll leave it up to y'all.
Let's start with the more boring one. How about the men's?
I was gonna say, yeah.
Let's go.
I was gonna say let's start. I was gonna go the opposite way. Let's start with the exciting one, the women. So let's start with the boring one and the men's. We're gonna end up with UConn and Purdue. It's the most boring potential final championship game that we could have had. It was easy to pencil in when you were looking at the bracket and been like, yeah, those are probably the two best teams. Didn't want to do it, wanted to avoid it. It just feels that way. That UConn 30-0 run. Oh, no. I was sitting there, I turned it off. Changed it at halftime, put on the Sabres game. I was at a family party Saturday night, and I was like, okay, I'm feeling good about Illinois' chances here. That was a solid start. Like, offense isn't really clicking, but neither UConn's playing pretty terrible right now. They can come back. And then I turned it back over, hadn't checked the score, and was just baffled. And that's what UConn does. Like they're a Terminator team like that. And you look at that game against Bama, like Bama had their best game against Clemson. They were not their best game, but they were shooting well in that game. They have to shoot like 60% from three to beat UConn. That's how I feel about that game.
And maybe more because they're not stopping UConn. That's the problem with Bama. I don't know if they can stop UConn. But you're right. It's just like I don't want to say it's like boring how good UConn is, but when they're so good on both ends of the court, it's like when they just snap into it, Jake, it was impossible for Illinois to do anything. Impossible. I mean, they had nothing going for them. It was like, yeah, they missed a lot of shots, but they weren't open. They weren't open looks.
Nope.
And then you got UConn making the easiest baskets in the world. Like, how are they getting this open? How
Did
are they
you
always
guys-
running?
They weren't even
You
hitting
guys
three. Like that's the
see-
thing. That run wasn't them hitting threes. It was them
No.
literally just like getting to the paint, walking,
Just
in,
doing
yeah,
whatever they wanted.
doing whatever they wanted. What were you gonna say, Donnie?
Did you guys see? I forget the exact time, but like Illinois didn't score for like 50 minutes of real time.
52
Yes.
minutes of real time. That's demoralizing.
In the
That
Elite
is
Eight, bro.
so demoralizing.
I feel bad. I was on Cape Cod. I wasn't even in Boston. Maybe if I was around, I would have gone. But I feel bad for the people who went to fucking TD Garden. There was just, it was a good game to start, and then it was just the Elite Eight fucking blowout, dude. You don't see that too often. And you're right. I think UConn's a little boring. The most exciting part about UConn might be Dan Hurley and just how much of a fucking psycho he is.
Yeah.
And he has his guys ready. He has his team ready. I'll tell you that much.
And I think it's a good example, bro. Like sometimes that's what players respond to is a guy who, if he could, he would be out there and fucking lace him up with you guys. But yeah,
100%.
I know you guys said it could be UConn, Purdue, and we have a boring championship game. What if NC State and my guy DJ Burns shocks the world?
I hope. First off, Dunny, I gotta give you credit for that again. I mean, you were high on NC State coming in. We kind of shot you down in the bracket. Apologize for that.
Yeah.
No,
They've been the Cinderella team in my mind. The only, I guess there's been a couple, but the only true spark in a underwhelming men's tournament so far. And I said it because there's been a lot of blowouts. There was a lot of chalk early on. And we didn't really have a true Cinderella, but you know what? Despite being in a major conference, despite being a team that won the ACC, I think we could call NC State a Cinderella as an 11 seed because you're going to see that clip over and over and over again. If Virginia doesn't miss the free throw and they hit that circus 3 to force overtime, NC State doesn't even make this tournament. They're not getting a bid. They may not have made the NIT, which is crazy. And now we get to watch Burns, who, and what a journey he's had, right? He was playing at Winthrop before this. We get to watch DJ Burns do what he's been doing.
6-year graduate student. I think he's either already the same age or already older than Anthony Edwards.
I think he's older. I think we saw a graphic that he's older.
But I can't quit him, dude. He's fucking unbelievable to watch.
And he's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. The absurd thing is that Alabama 11.5-point underdogs, NC State 8.5-point underdogs. That's where we're at this point.
For Final Four games. And honestly, like, it's hard to argue. I like Alabama. I love Nate Oates. I like the team. It's hard to argue that Connecticut doesn't deserve to be a double-digit favorite. They won every game by, I think, 13+ in the past two tournaments.
Yeah.
So it's like, you gotta keep riding the wave there. And then Purdue, I said this to Dunny before we went live, Jake, and I want to hear your thoughts on it. But I said that there's 4 teams, right? 4 teams in this Final Four. If you want to watch high-quality basketball, you watch UConn. If you want to watch fun basketball, you watch NC State. If you want to watch chaotic, entertaining basketball, you watch Alabama. And if you don't want to watch basketball anymore, you watch Purdue. and that's kind of how I feel with this team. And I'm not going to take anything away from how good Purdue's been. They probably had the best out-of-conference resume coming into the tournament. They have proven that they've been one of the best teams in college basketball all year long in their road to get to the Final Four. I'm not discrediting that at all whatsoever. I'm just saying I don't want to watch them. They're boring. They play 4 guys outside the arc. Zach Edey sits in the paint. 3 seconds doesn't exist when Purdue plays basketball because he camps there, man.
Yeah.
He should get a folding lawn chair and sit in the paint for how he does. And I get it. He can do that little step out and step back in, and they're like, okay, it resets. I don't care. It's boring. They throw it to Edey. This is Purdue's offense, right? You got 4 guys stand outside the arc. All right, Edey stands in the paint, throw to him. All right, is he going to draw the double? Oh, he drew the double. All right, kick it out. Let's take a wide open 3. Hope we make it. If not, don't worry. Edey's either going to get the rebound or get blocked out by 3 guys, and then we'll have someone else run in for the offensive board. Or play number 2 for Purdue. All right, we're going to give it to Edey. Oh, they're not sending the double? All right, let's do that little hook shot. Oh, he made it? Cool. Oh, he didn't make it? All right, we'll just wait for the whistle and we'll shoot 2 free throws. And I can't watch that basketball. I'm sorry. I can't do it. I'm not taking anything away from how good Purdue's been. I'm not taking anything away from what their resume is. I'm not taking anything away from this team. All I'm saying is that I need DJ Burns and NC State to win because I can't watch this team in a championship game. They're so boring. And I think Purdue loses by 20 to UConn because UConn will have the only team to match with their size with Kling against Edey. Yep. I think Kling's a better player than Edey, especially defensively.
Yep.
Just his awareness and how everything, like just interior defense, just overall better. But guys, I mean, I can't do it anymore. I can't watch this Purdue team. And I think that's part of the reason that this tournament has been really underwhelming to me is a lot of these games have just not been fun watches. Yeah, NC State, their road's been fun. Alabama's played some fun games. UConn, you could tell me you're enjoying watching your pick when you pick the number 1 overall seed win, right? Everyone who picks them in their brackets. Yeah, it's fun watching them win by 20-25, but someone who just appreciates good quality basketball, yeah, watching UConn's fun. But you'll know about 10 minutes into the game, yeah, they're going to win this pretty easily. And it's just been an underwhelming tournament on the men's side where you have one team that's just so much better than everyone they faced. And then you got the other 1 seed that's probably better than everyone. Just boring.
Yep.
It's just boring basketball.
Last thing here, or about the men, I know we still got to touch on the women's there. I'm wondering what do you guys expect of do you guys think DJ Burns is going to be able to do what he's been doing against Purdue? Like the Edey Burns thing, fucks with me. I can't picture how this is going to go because part of me is he might be able to get Edey away from the basket a little bit.
Yeah.
And another part of me is that maybe this is just the last force that can finally slow Burns down, and then nothing really works for NC State. That's the only thing that worries me.
They're going to need the whistle on their side because Burns is going to play physical. NC State has played physical, especially down low this tournament. And a lot of the games, they let you play physical. We saw, especially the Duke game, the Texas Tech game, even the first game, NC State playing very physical down low, especially on the glass. Purdue's had the whistle on their side all tournament long. And I think it's also because the refs are a little afraid of not calling a foul when you have a guy as big as Edey, or be like, oh, it has to be a foul. I'm a little worried, Dunny, because I could see early foul trouble for NC State, and this game could get ugly that way. But I'm rooting. I'll tell you what, my money and my rooting interest is all on NC State, all in on NC State.
And NC State has great senior guards and everything else that can really help them in that game if it's close, if it gets down to it, if they can. Yeah, it really depends on what that whistle is going to be. Edey does get beat up a lot, but they also give him a whistle too. And it's especially in this tournament, they've given him that benefit. They wanted this Purdue team to be in this spot. I guess it's a good story for college basketball, getting them back there and everything else into the Final Four, but it would be great if NC State, all of America is going to be cheering for NC State on Saturday. Everybody's going to be behind DJ and the squad. So I'm with you, Steve, but I really hope that they can keep that game close and then see what happens.
Yeah.
Do we got any crazy predictions, or are we both saying UConn's going to win the championship?
Yeah,
I got UConn, but I'm not dying. I'm not dying just yet. It's going to be over NC State. So.
All right. You know what, Donnie? I'll ride with you just because I can't watch.
I will be betting NC State no matter what.
Yeah, absolutely.
No matter what.
Are you laying the points with UConn?
Yes.
I feel like you have to, right?
Yeah. You said 13 by every game, and they're 11.
I believe 13 every game in the last 2 tournaments. Yeah.
Bro, Dan Hurley was on the Pat McAfee show talking about how he has lucky underwear that he wears for specific games. I'm like, this guy's a fucking straight sicko. He's covering spreads. If he's got underwear for specific games, I'm with UConn, dude.
And Bama is not going to be able to shoot like they want to in that game. I think it's going to be hard against that UConn team.
Last thing for my guy, DJ Burns. I tweeted this the other day. It's just what I see. I have to see him at the next level, even if it's a team just taking a chance on him. I think it will translate. We're seeing a little bit more post play in the NBA. I don't think it's gonna ever come back to what it used to be, but I literally said this man has the midi and body of Zach Randolph because he can step out and hit that mid range. It's slow. It's slow like Zebo used to do it. He can hit it. He can knock it down. The post moves of Al Jefferson, if you guys remember Big Al before Al Horford. And he passes and has footwork like Jokic. And I put in parentheses, chill out. That's just what I see. I know he's not at that level, but as far as his timing, his touch, and what he's able to do with his feet on the block, I see all that stuff. And all I'll say is if they lose on Saturday, I hope that's not, the last we see of DJ Burns on a big stage.
Or apparently the NFL is interested in him. Throw him at left tackle and see what he does there.
I want to see him get a shot in the NBA first, but I would not hate that at all.
No, not at all. The women's side of this tournament, way more exciting. Monday night was some of the best theater I've seen in all of college basketball in my whole life, honestly. Which both games were great. Obviously, the hype was around Iowa and LSU. But UConn and USC was a battle as well. What do you guys have for your championship game? I mean, it's going to be hard. Another NC State, and Dunny, you had it here in our notes. The first women's and men's teams to make the same Final Four. NC State against South Carolina. I feel like it's really hard to pick against this undefeated South Carolina team.
Yeah, they're so balanced. They have size.
They're size too. Yeah,
Cardoso is just an absolute monster down low. I mean, I'll be honest with you guys. I haven't watched too much of the NC State women's team this year. It's actually hilarious because I'm in, I think, dead last in the men's bracket challenge, and I'm in first in my group for the women's. I got all four Final Four teams right on the women's side. Amazing. Didn't get any of them right on the men's side. So there we are. Steve, the women's basketball guru, apparently got all four right. But I really haven't watched much of NC State. South Carolina's just – it's kind of, the culture they built, right? Same program every single year, just size. They're going to dominate down low on you. They're going to have the significant rebounding advantage. And it's just a consistent team that just is never going to put themselves in a bad spot. It would be very cool. I mean, to see two kind of quote unquote Cinderellas. I know they're a 3-seed NC State, but a 3-seed on the women's side, especially NC State. Like no one really expected them to be here. I think that would be very cool if we could see both NC States get to a championship. But I want the storybook ending for women's college basketball, and I want Caitlin Clark to go through pretty much the gauntlet, right? She got her revenge against LSU. Now she's going up against UConn and Paige Beckers, who was arguably probably the best women's player before her injury and before Clark really came onto the scene.
I think people were talking about Paige Beckers before people even knew who Caitlin Clark was.
100%. Caitlin Clark came off the bench when they were playing their USA team because Paige and Haley Van Leef were that dominant. And I think it's just good. I want her to go through the gauntlet. You beat LSU, you beat UConn, and then how do you top it off to get the national championship with an Iowa team with her supporting cast? There's some good players, right? Hannah Stolke's all right, Katie Martin's all right. I really like Gabby Marshall. I think Gabby Marshall just plays the style like she's small guard, but she plays like Marcus Smart essentially on defense. Yeah. But I want Caitlin Clark to kind of go through it. So I want to see her play South Carolina in the championship. I think, and we talked about the ratings for the LSU-Iowa game where it broke so many ratings. It was better than every MLB game. It was better than every NBA Finals game except one last year. I think it was better than every men's tournament game except two or something this year. I mean, it was crazy.
I think the Duke NC State game was higher.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there was one more.
15 million.
I think there's only one other one. I think there were 2 games this year or something, maybe 1 or 2 that were higher. I think we could see UConn, Iowa be right up there. Up there with ratings that
I think people are just going to go LSU back and be like, all right, I think, I think there was a huge viewership of just wanting to see the Caitlin Clark versus LSU, Angel Reese, Kim Mulkey, all the drama. Right. And then I think they probably got a taste of Caitlin Clark and they're like, holy shit, like I got to tune back in. And so I think it's going to be a lot of that for this next game against UConn.
And I think it's great for the sport, because what have I said, especially when I was trying to push the WNBA agenda the past couple of years, is the best way to grow a sport is to get star players with personalities, star players that people can latch on and be like, this is why I want to root for this person. This is why I want to root for so-and-so, because not only are they super talented at whatever sport they're playing, but they have that personality that I can jump onto, that I can root for. And that's exactly what women's college basketball has absolutely perfected this season. And you look at it in terms of like the men's tournament being a little underwhelming. The women's tournament is set up to be arguably historically one of the greatest of all time, where you have an Elite Eight matchup that shattered records, but now you have Caitlin Clark and Paige Beckers going at it, UConn versus Iowa, two of the best women's basketball players we've ever seen. But not to mention that too, if Caitlin Clark, which pretty much I think 90% of the country, it feels like, is rooting for Iowa to win the championship at this point, right? I don't think that's too crazy. I know there's a lot of people that want UConn, but I feel like majority of people who have gotten into women's college basketball have rooted is because of Caitlin Clark and everything she's kind of done to change the game and to grow the game.
Mm-hmm.
She's got to go through not just UConn and let's just say South Carolina beats NC State, not just two of the best teams and two of some of the best, I guess, balanced rosters and players, two of the greatest coaches of all time. You got Gino, and then you got Dawn Staley.
Yep.
I mean, this is crazy, and it's kind of the perfect storybook ending if she can get the championship, because she did it staying with the same core from Iowa she's kind of played with her whole career.
Yep.
And if you look at this Iowa team, and I'm not trying to be mean, but if you take Caitlin Clark off this team, this is barely a tournament team. Maybe not even. And they, you know what? And they do complement each other well. And like I said, I'm not going to try to say that they're bad by any means. I think there's a very couple solid players, but you need that type of superstar on this team. And I just love how when you watch the LSU game the other night, like Caitlin Clark will never try to do too much, but she'll always know when, all right, it's my turn to kind of step up here. But Caitlin Clark, some of the best playmaking, she gets her teammates involved.
And Kim Mulkey kind of said that, and she kind of paid her respects, in a Kim Mulkey way. She was like, I'm glad that girl is gone next year and whatever. But she said that, she said that it's tough to defend a girl like that because she makes the supporting cast that much better.
Right.
Yep.
And you saw it even before like the double came a few times on Monday night. Like, she was already just putting the ball in the perfect spot, and one of her teammates had a wide open layup, and you're like, holy shit. Like, I thought for sure she was going to jack another 27-foot three. But instead, it's like already you just before your eyes, she's making the right pass, and then she has a teammate wide open under the basket.
I do think that Iowa, because of everything you said about the roster going into this game, I do think they're gonna have a tough time getting by this UConn team.
I think so too. I think it might be harder than LSU.
And definitely, and because Gino has time to prepare for them and come up with a plan to kind of bother her and everything. And I think LSU, if Angel doesn't get hurt in that first half, I mean, I know she came back and she was still good. If she doesn't get hurt in that first half, that game might have went differently there.
And then foul out, right?
And then fouling out. But South Carolina they're 36-0, man. Like, it's going to be, I don't see anybody getting past them. I think I have them in my bracket. I think it's an easy pick. It's a lame pick, but it feels like the foregone conclusion. It's going to be tough for Iowa. But if Clark does it, like you said, Steve, it's through the gauntlet, and it's because she had one of, if not the greatest women's tournament runs we've ever seen.
And it would be so good for the sport too. It really would, because I think Iowa winning would not only, everyone wants Caitlin Clark to win, right? I think it would be great for the sport that way, but it also get people to pay attention to these other teams that they normally don't pay attention to.
Yep. And
that, like I said, that's how you grow the game. I mean, people forget, like Gino has been to 23 Final Fours.
It's insane.
11 national championships. I believe 30 or 31 seasons as a coach. 23 Final Fours.
Absurd,
that's like a 68% of like seasons gone to a Final Four. Like that in itself, if you had told me, beforehand, Caitlin Clark's potential road, and you would say, all right, LSU, UConn, then South Carolina, I'd be like, any of those three opponents are capable of winning a championship. Those are 3 championship type matchups.
Yep.
Which I think is so good for this game because we saw the ratings of just an Elite 8 matchup. An Elite 8 matchup on a Monday night. We got a Friday night game. And then you got Sunday for the championship. Come on. I think we're going to see records shatter, and I really do hope Iowa gets there because I don't want it to be, and I still think there'll be pretty good ratings, but I don't want it to be like South Carolina, UConn, and half the country be like, all right, I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
Because I want to grow the sport, not just one player, right? And I think Caitlin Clark has been very, vocal about that she wants to grow the game, that she has always said there's a lot of good players besides just me, and I give her a ton of credit for that. Obviously, she's been so much fun to watch and an absolute joy, and she's kind of, revolutionized the game to some degree. But I think it's bigger than that, and I think this is a huge step in the right direction for women's basketball. Because what have I said since day one I got on the podcast here, guys? If you like watching high-quality basketball, does not matter what it is, whether it's the NBA, whether it's men's college, whether it's women's college, whether it's the WNBA. If you just want to watch someone go and ball out, I hate to break it to you, there's a lot of talented individuals in the world right now who can put on some entertaining basketball games.
Yeah, man, it's
gonna be fun.
Great. I feel like it's just the beginning, and yeah, I think I agree with you. I don't really think that you can go wrong with the matchups here for the women, but I do think viewership wise and just as far as the historic runs goes, kind of a revenge story, if you will, too. On Caitlin Clark making it there, and she plays like she did Monday night. It might not matter what UConn has drawn up for them. So, if you guys don't have anything else, I think that'll do it. That'll do it for Happy Hour Hoops this week. Steve, I like how I said at the beginning of the show that we didn't have much to go over, but you know, once the three of us get talking about basketball, who knows where it's going to take us. So yeah, Final Fours this weekend. It's going to be great, both sides. And then, keep your eyes peeled down the stretch in the NBA, play-in situations, MVP talks. Maybe Stephen A will throw in someone who has no chance of winning MVP into his rankings.
I'm waiting until they go Kyrie should be the MVP on the Mavs over Luka. I'm waiting because I think we're getting close. They're running out of excuses at this point.
Someone's gonna say some dumb shit like that.
Luka Doncic's the second best player on his team.
Like we said at the top, guys, don't forget to download the Win Streaks app. Me and Steve mentioned it. Baseball every day, all day for the foreseeable future. So go make your 5 picks per day. 100% free to play the Win Streaks app. All sports. 100 players win cash prizes every week up to $2,000. And don't forget to use our code HHH when you download the app. Playing Win Streaks daily. My roommate actually told me on Monday he went 5-0 in his picks. Ooh. And he got a little incentive bonus. So that's what Win Streaks does. If you go perfect, you get money put into your account as well. And this is a free app to play, guys. I can't stress that enough. The contest runs every week from Monday to Sunday. And that'll do it for Happy Hour Hoops, guys. Thank you for listening.